Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So today we've got, I believe, a returning guest at this point because Drew went through my career services program back, I think it was maybe like a year and a half ago at this point. But we are going to be talking all about interviews. So we've already lined up some sample interview questions, but also just to talk through somebody who has hired people in the past, recently gone through the interview process themselves to get their first analytics job. So let's go ahead and bring in Drew. Drew, how are you doing?
I was actually in your November 2022 cohort, so we're actually approaching 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, the time flies by. So you've been working as an analyst for 2 years at this point. I guess a year and a half?
No, I got the job in May of 2023, so 1 year, 1 year, 4 months.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess I'll let you kind of tell your story to kind of reintroduce yourself back to the podcast listeners.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, my name's Drew. I originally outside of college. I started as a branch manager at Hertz Rental Car, just basically managing stores, and I've been to multiple stores. And while I was there in the Chicago market, I've run like a hiring event where we did like walk-in hiring, but I did a lot of hiring for my stores and other stores in the area. And the other thing was after that, I transitioned to like that was branch manager level, so that was just kind of overseeing one store or one or two stores at a time. At my next job, I made it to like a district or regional manager level, where I would oversee 20 plus sites or so like that. It was over like half the state of Wisconsin. So I did a lot of hiring for that, as far as bringing on entry level candidates, promoting people within the company on their way up, and also helping out other managers in the area hiring for their own areas. So I think at this point I've probably conducted more than 200 plus interviews combined.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
That's
I've
awesome.
quite an experience giving interviews, and I think that really helped me with getting into the analyst job. And so that's kind of an introduction for me. I mean, there's a lot of topics we could talk about, but I think one thing that's highly underrated in the space is that aspect of the resume, the interviewing, and stuff like that. Because people, they love the courses, so they gather up,
Yeah.
the SQL course, the Excel course, whatever. When I think people should be investing more in like what you provided, the career services or resume review, things of that nature.
Yeah, because it's funny because going on an interview is almost like there are a lot of parallels, I should say, between like going on a first date.
Yeah.
Because I think something that is missed on a lot of people, specifically trying to break into the space, maybe not so much people trying to get a promotion, is it's a vibe check. Like these people are going to have to work
Yeah.
with you day in and day out. And you might be super technical, or you might be even more impressive than anybody else on the team. But
Yeah.
if you're kind of an asshole, no one's going to want to work with you.
Yeah, that's very true. And also, when there's hundreds of candidates applying, it really is that once you get down to those final interviews, it's okay. Do they make the qualifications as far as technical? And as long as they kind of make those baseline qualifications as far as can they do the job, then it really is about, are they a good fit for the company? Are they a good fit for the team? It really does come down to that cultural and personality fit that I think is like highly underrated by people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let me ask you this. How much work do you think is realistically involved in getting to, let's say you're like someone like you that's worked in another kind of business sector, maybe doing management? Because I'm sure that like in your previous role, you probably worked with Excel, right?
Yeah, I work with Excel and Google Sheets. So I've worked with both of them. And I even use that as far as the interviews for my analytics job is, yeah, I hadn't used SQL on the job. I used Tableau as an end user, and I did mention that as well. But with the limited things I did have access to in my job before this, I went out and found things that I could do. So like with Google Sheets, there was a spreadsheet that listed all of the company's assets as far as the cars they had.
Mhm.
And as far as keeping track of the vehicles and all the reports around that, I got my hands on it and I said I could make this more efficient as far as what they needed to do. And I added a bunch of if statements and pivot tables to kind of bring down their workload. And I mentioned that in my interview because basically, if you can take some kind of tool like Excel, like Google Sheets, and you can either save money or save time, that's what an analyst does, and that's worth mentioning in an interview.
Right. Yeah. So essentially what you did was you took your job and kind of pivoted it into getting you real world analytics experience.
Yeah. And then also to touch back on that Tableau piece, I was only an end user of Tableau, right? So I wasn't designing the dashboards or anything of that nature, but I still mention it in my interviews because I took that information from Tableau and I used that to make decisions for the business. So I mean,
Mhm.
really all I was doing with the built dashboard was changing the filters and only using it as an end user, but I still created a story around that for my interview. I think a lot of people kind of shy away from that jobs the how they use these tools on the job because they didn't use them in like a true analytical, very technical sense. And when they create their projects, I think they overemphasize what they just built recently with their project. But with almost any job, you can tie it back to some kind of you can tie it back to analytics or decision making, which that's what analytics is decision making.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because currently I'm working as a category analyst, and
Mm-hmm.
we do have a team that we interface with that are business analysts, and they are building out kind of the back end of stuff.
Yeah.
But my job is actually more business oriented. So like we're looking at like a P&L and trying to identify like, okay, our costs are up this month. What's going on with that? So like what you were doing in that role with the as the end user was actual an analytics. Like
Yeah.
you were using the tool or the data to inform a specific decision, and then you can pull out like really, I'm not sure about like your specific instance, but if you can say I use data to drive this decision and it's worth $50,000 or 150,000 or however, like either in additional sales or reduce costs or increasing the margin,
All
like
of the above.
yeah, yeah.
Because
So I
what
mean,
I had access to was our profit margin statements, and it's how can I maximize the profit margin. So when it came to using Tableau, one thing that was with the rental car business, and a lot of that is like sales at the counter, buy the
mhm,
additional car insurance and whatnot. That's where the what's called high ROI is for as far as getting those additional things. So you could see like individual people how they were doing, or you could see the individual products and see which ones were selling well, which weren't, and then kind of create a sales strategy around that. So what I was really doing was I was taking data and then using that to make operations decisions.
right, yeah, and that is the job of an analyst, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, people totally lose the forest for the trees because they get fixated on like this tool or SQL, and then they become like they over identify with it. It's like I
Yeah.
am a Power BI person or I am a SQL person.
Yeah, they're too focused on what can they do in the SQL or what they can do in Python, and I think it's really about if you can learn, the basics of what is mostly used, and then you can show that you can solve problems on a job. You're
Mhm.
gonna, learn and develop on the job, or you should at least be communicating in your interview that you're willing to learn and grow. And as long as you know you're hiring someone with that mindset of they're a problem solver and they're always improving or looking for process improvements in the company, that technical skills kind of will develop as well.
Right. Yeah, I think it's. Oh, what was that? Is that
Was
your
that
cat?
my cat? Yeah.
um, yeah, it's. I think it's easier to teach someone the technical skills than it is to teach them like business domain knowledge because
Yep.
there's actually more probably moving pieces in any given business than there are buttons to push on Tableau or Power BI or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so what you started to touch on is that you've hired people at the entry level and you've also hired people in promotions. So
Yep.
I want to kind of dig into both of those topics. So, because I think like an entry-level job is an entry-level job.
Yeah.
How would you go about feeling out these entry-level candidates?
So with the entry-level candidates, let me say at least with my last job, I kind of redid their entire interview process. Their old interview process looked like this. It was 30 minutes and it was 30 questions. So to me, it felt like I was rattling off questions at them, and it was super quick. It's only a minute per question, not including the questions that they ask at the end, the introduction, and what I tell them about the job at the front. So it's even less than a minute per question. And originally, when we had this first interview process, it kind of felt like I was just trying to get through it as fast as I can, because I have to do the same questions for the same candidates for the same position. So I have to get through them. And it just felt like very too rapid fire. So when I was thinking about, designing an interview and how it should look like, my thing was I want to ask really good questions that elicit longer responses. So instead of these 30 questions that got very fast and short responses, almost only yes or no's for a lot of them, I turned it into how do I get this question to elicit a paragraph of information from them, because 10 really good questions is better than 30 questions rapid fire. And it's with what they say within their answers that I can then write down the bullet points, and then that's how I get a better feel for a candidate.
Yeah, it's almost like behavioral questions.
Yeah,
like what would you do?
I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
But as far as asking about their previous job, and I usually like to focus on questions where they're talking about a previous scenario, because what I want to hear back like actual things that occurred with them on the job, so then I get an idea for how they behave. Because a lot of times when you just ask them questions that are more what's your personality and stuff like that, and you'll get the same general responses over. Like you'll hear I'm friendly, everyone says I get along with them. You get the same generic response over and over again. Yeah, team player.
Yeah.
So it's all about asking questions like, give me an example of a work scenario where X, Y, and Z happened, so that you get an actual scenario, because that's how you get unique responses from candidates, which is, I think, really important.
All right, so we've got some listener questions that we pull in. So Jay Murphy is asking, is that Jay? Yeah, that's Jay. You can't even tell it on this script on the screen. So how long did it take you to learn to communicate overt value relating to domain knowledge during the interview?
So yeah, I would say working at my two previous jobs, they were kind of different industries. So I've on my third different industry now, and I think it's really kind of important to understand the business and kind of understand the company's strategic vision, and then kind of align what you're doing with the company's vision, and really understand what the business is wanting, expecting, and things of that nature. And as far as whatever industry you're working in, you want to kind of become an expert in the business side, even if you are an analyst working in the background, and you're just using your tools in the background. You kind of want to communicate with people that are on the front lines of sales, operations, marketing, whatever it is, to really understand the business, and understand if it's a business to business, you want to understand those vendor relationships and the dealings of the company with other companies. And if it's customer facing, you want to understand how the business interacts with their customers and things of that nature. But it's very important to learn the business, and then kind of communicate that during the interview. And I think that's just something that comes with time.
Yeah. Two terms come to mind. So there's drivers and there's levers. So what drives a business? Is it seasonality? Is it, a specific instance? Like, let's say someone's tire blows out, that's a specific driver for a business. And then the levers you can pull of, for example, I sent out an email to announce that we're live streaming. So I could play with the timing of that email or the body of it. So figuring out where you can actually change the business, I think is pretty key to that process.
For sure.
All right. So Jay Murphy's got another question too. So I guess this is back to like how you change the process. So how did you adjust it from essentially interview speed dating and use that knowledge to improve the interview?
Is that reference to the comment you made earlier about dating though?
Well, that's interesting. I think it's a play between two things that we mentioned. So I did mention kind of like it's almost like a first date, but then you were saying like the initial way they were interviewing was basically 30 questions, rapid fire, blah, 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 to where you were saying it's 10 open-ended questions are probably better than 30 yes, no, true, false.
Yeah, I mean, the way to adjust it was simply just reducing the questions and kind of increasing the quality of the questions, and specifically always having that kind of little tidbit at the end of question, like please provide, an experience, whether it's on your previous job or in school of, X, Y, and Z. So kind of like, for example, for like a behavioral question, if it's like, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker, and then that is a better question because it's going to elicit a previous experience, and then it's also going to elicit how they kind of behave, interact, and kind of solve that problem.
Gosh, okay. Because so behind the scenes, I went and reached out, put together a group of former students of mine. So I think that's a specific question that Gabrielle Breeze asked. Which is, So actually, can I just pose that question to you?
So I can mention why I like it, what I'm looking for, and things of that nature, and that kind of question. And to reiterate the question for everyone, it's basically the question is, tell me about a time or experience where you had a conflict with a coworker or another student, and how did you go about resolving it for it? And basically, that can kind of show me, problem solving. It kind of shows, their demeanor at work and how they conduct themselves. So what I'm mostly looking for is like, did they handle it professionally? Did they handle it cordially? When I kind of do these interviews, I always take notes. So then I write down keywords, and a strong keyword that people use in that one is they say they're empathetic, which is also something I'm looking for. Are they trying to understand where their coworker is disagreeing with them, or are they only trying to argue their point? Because that's very important too, is you want someone that's listening to what the other person's saying and considering their side, even if they don't agree, because you don't want someone who's very stubborn or stuck in their ways. And also at this previous job, this was a really important question I implemented because I had to deal with a lot of internal employee conflict. And there were situations where they couldn't resolve it themselves, and I had to drive out to that location and mediate. So I wanted to be hiring people that I felt like they could mediate their own conflicts, because that'll save me from having to go out and deal with it.
Yeah. Also, so Paula said happy Thursday, y'all. Happy Thursday to you as well, Paula. This, to go deeper into the kind of the subtext of that question, there's a trade-off between like the big 5 personality traits of being agreeable versus being disagreeable. Because you would think like, oh, of course you want to be agreeable, but there are downsides to being agreeable. Because let's say that, because I'm actually quite disagreeable. But I'm also like kind of charming. Like I will disagree with you in a way that doesn't humiliate you, but is like a little bit kind of funny, or like it kind of relieves the tension. Because if you're 100% agreeable, if you spot something that happens, and instead of, and your manager's like, we should do this, and you spot this, if you're agreeable, you're just going to let it kind of pass through and not really speak your mind. But if you're too disagreeable, then it's just like every single conversation is an argument.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I did have one supervisor under me that pushed back quite a bit, and she even once made the comment like, she's like, I feel so bad because I argue or with you all the time, and I even told her I was like, your pushback is different than other people's pushback because you have productive pushback. I mean,
Right.
there's pushback for the sake of them just being upset and they're not trying to reason through it, and there's pushback where she was at, where it was very constructive criticism and it was great feedback, and I implemented a lot of the pushback she mentioned, because sometimes I would give a directive to the site supervisors, and there wasn't an issue or a problem that I foresaw or considered, and the other managers would have just implemented it knowing of that issue and wouldn't have they would have been afraid to tell me, whereas she
Right.
would come to me and be like, hey, this is the issue with what you're trying to direct. And I really appreciated that because at the bottom end of the line, it's like, I want to make the right decisions for the company. I want to make effective decisions. So it's like, if you catch something, I'm totally open for you to come back to me and give me that pushback. So I think there is a healthy amount of disagreeableness.
Right. So all right. So Paula's congratulating me. Charm and disagreeableness. That is my combination. I'm not sure it's the best combination, but it is what it is. Yeah, because being disagreeable but aware of what's going on I think is very useful. What you don't want to have is someone who is arrogant, knows nothing about what's going on, and then it's like, well, you need to do this and you should do this. So this, like, I feel like I saw that, man, this is back 15, 20 years ago. And I was working as a banquet waiter at the Holiday Inn Sunsbury on the beach in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I remember there's this one guy I worked with, and we were all college kids. Like, we didn't know. We were concerned about where's the party at tonight.
Yeah.
We weren't like really thinking about like, how can we optimize this business? But I remember him being like, this is stupid and this is stupid. It's like, you know nothing about this business. Like you're a banquet waiter and you're also like 21 years old. So there is an art to being disagreeable. But it's funny because I'm noticing this develop with my current manager. He likes the sparring that goes back and forth, where I feel like almost everyone else on my team is very I keep using this analogy, and I don't know if it's like good or bad, but it's like there's certain people who have prey energy and there's certain people who have predator energy. Like picture like out in the Sahara Desert or wherever, or somewhere out in the Serengeti. There's like gazelle people who are like constantly looking for like threats, and then there's the big apex lion that's like just non-reactive, going through their day. Oh, they see something like they want and they go after it, but then it's pretty much relaxed the rest of the time. I'm noticing my manager we're bantering a lot more. And I remember like this happened literally yesterday. One of the other guys was like, man, I've never seen him tear into someone like this before. And it's funny because I wasn't taking it in a defensive way. It was just like, yeah, we have a difference of opinion, and I'm gonna tell you like it is. And I'm also willing and humble enough to be like, you were right, I was wrong. But then it's almost like a game that gets played.
Yeah. But that's also another key factor that I kind of look for in interviews is there a willingness to acknowledge mistakes? So usually some kind of question around, can you tell me about a time that, you've made a mistake on the job and how you went about to fix it? That question tells a lot about a person. You want, because if the person immediately says, oh, I really never ever make a mistake, it's like, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. It's whether can you own up to it? Do you try to hide it? Do you bring it forth right away and try to solve it? That question kind of tells a lot about a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell people to not shy away from being afraid of, mentioning a real mistake in that scenario.
Right. All right. So Abigail, I sent you the link if you want to join, and we can talk. We can kind of debrief the interview that you went on. So, Abigail, was she in your cohort?
So I started in the November cohort, and I think she came in the one after, either December or January. But I was with her in a cohort. Yeah.
Yeah. So She worked for a while. I think Abigail, I want you to come on because I might get the story wrong. I think she had another kid and then went on maternity leave and then didn't go back to that job. So she's back on the job hunt. And the idea was that she communicated that was happening. Actually, she said she took the advice from one of my videos, which is really cool. I mean, it's cool to like say something and then have people listen to it, implement it, and then, give you feedback on it. So she's back looking for another analytics job, trying to re-enter. And she was saying that, in this comment here, the interview that she went on today was almost 100% cultural fit. So I guess let's root down on that topic. So how do you go about as an interviewer? Because now you're into a position where you're sitting on the other side of the interview table. Oh, Abby. Hey.
Let's root down.
Uh-oh. Abby, do you have headphones? Because we're getting some feedback.
Okay, I turned off you on YouTube. Do you get the
Oh, that's it. Now? Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Let's rearrange this a little bit. There we go. All right, so this is cool. This is so meta. We're like breaking the fourth wall here. You're like in the chat, now you're on the call.
Yeah.
So give us an update. What's been going on in your world?
Well, I had a baby 4 months ago. That's been wild.
Congrats.
Because there's a 10-year gap between my youngest before and the baby, so it's like being a new parent again.
Oh wow.
I really enjoyed my time at CareCentrix. I was a reporting analyst. I really enjoyed all of it. I got to build tableaus from the ground up for departments. I had some really high-level reports that I got to put out every week. But I wasn't going to get the maternity leave that I wanted or needed, really. So they had already hired a temp to kind of take my place while I was gone. And so I gave them the heads up even before the maternity leave, hey, I'm not coming back. So I've been at home since March. I had a month before I had the baby. So I listened to your podcast about your job search and how you filtered things and made sure to like stay on top of how many applicants a job has. Because, oh my gosh, I remember my job search from 2022
it's
or 2023 to now is crazy how many applications.
Drastic shift. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's definitely much more competitive.
Yeah, you guys got in at like the perfect time.
I know, and I almost feel like I shot myself in the foot by giving up that job when I had it, because it is easier to find a job when you have a job. But
that being said, it's going to be easier for you to get your next. Like now that you've kind of like broken the seal, so to speak, like you've gotten your first analytics job, and then you kept it, and you left it on amicable terms. It wasn't like you were fired because of bad performance.
Right.
It was just kind of life circumstance. It's gonna be easier for you. Although that being said, maybe it'll be just as hard as it was last time because it's so much more competitive. I don't know.
I think we've all observed that it's been getting more competitive. I'm sure, John, with your courses and your cohorts, you've noticed that with each consecutive one, the market's been getting more and more difficult.
Well, that's why I shut it down about a year ago. No, a year and a half. I think I only did like maybe three or 6 months after you guys, because I felt bad. I felt unethical taking money from people, and it was like that placement rate went from like 99 to nearly 100% down to like it was just going down. And then also to I didn't want to just take people's money and then leave them hanging. So like I would let them just work with me for longer and longer. And it was like, okay, this isn't working. It's not that it's not working. It's that it's so much more competitive. And I think what happened was the tech bubble pop. I think that was a huge contributing factor to it.
One of the biggest issues is that when there is those slight downturns in the economies or the tech companies, they hire a lot of people and then they have to let go. When they're letting people go, they're letting talented people into the market.
Right.
And it's really hard for the entry level without that prior experience to compete with the people that have that already experience there. So the market's been getting very crowded with, I think, experienced analysts.
I think that is true. And I think there's also another like socioeconomic factor that's going on where it's like, what do they call it? Like quiet quitting. Like now there are people who are at work and they're just applying to jobs all day long. I don't know what the term is for that, but like for the job that I landed, I think they posted it on, let's say, a Tuesday. I applied by Thursday. And within that 3-day span, I think 300 people had applied. So to give you some, like, I guess some encouragement, there were 300 bad applicants. And then they went through the entire pool of them. I think they might have interviewed one or two, but then a month and a half later reopened that job. And then I applied within an hour or 2 hours and then was like right there at the top of the list. Yeah. So don't let that huge number, that daunting, I think it actually might be lowballing the amount of applicants, because I think that, so it's funny, now I'm in a career services program that Solomon Khan's putting out. He's the former VP of analytics for Nielsen. And I just saw his, like, we're on the school app, which is hilarious because it's SKOOL. And we have like these conversation threads, and someone asked about what's the market like. And he was saying that most companies are getting over 1,000 applications right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing for what I'm applying to.
Yeah. And they're not, yes, Drew, I think that there are talented people going out in the market, but I think what happened was there's some constriction going on in the marketplace. Like the people who are making 600,000 are now making 400,000 or 450, and then the people that were at that mark are coming down some, and then there's also new people trying to enter, and it's a bit of a mess right now, but people are still getting jobs.
Yes. So the company I interview with is a startup. They started in January of 2020, which is like the worst time to start anything. And what was interesting about applying for this job is it's a recruiter who put the posting up, and they wanted you to apply on LinkedIn, but also send an email writing 250 words why you fit the attributes that they listed in the job posting. And then I went through the interview today, and it was very much like a culture fit type of interview. And they want me to write another essay, pretty much, no word limit, on why I want to work there and why I would be a good fit for the company. So, but I think my weakest point was I'd only had one official analytics job. So I'm going to have to talk that up.
I would think in the application process, since there's 1,000 applicants, like we were mentioning, you kind of want something that proves effort. I've never been a fan of cover letters, but if someone submits a cover letter over someone who doesn't, you have some level of they're interested enough to write a cover letter, as long as it's not generic. Or as Abby mentioned, if there's, hey, you got to email and write 250 words, I think that's probably a good strategy for them to implement to cut down from 1,000 to hopefully like 500 if they can cut it in half, because there's some extra requirement that shows a level of interest. Because I think with those LinkedIn, what are those quick applies?
The easy apply.
I mean, it's just you click 2 buttons and you're applied. That's just going to give you tons of applicants. Are they truly interested? Do they know anything about the company?
Right. Yeah. That's interesting, because my first guttural response when they were like having you write essays, I was like, that sounds really tedious and annoying. But I guess
really good at those.
I'm terrible.
It doesn't mean they read them though. They like I said, it could be did they do it? I had college professors that were like that, where it was length of the essay and not really the quality of the essay.
Yeah.
I have a history degree. I can write an essay on anything.
Good. Okay. So maybe what we could do is help you brainstorm, because I don't think you only having one analytics job, that seems like a bad frame. Like
well, I walked her through my resume, and specifically pointed out where in other jobs how I'd use Google Analytics, I'd use Excel for almost every job I'd had, and really pointed that out. But she did specifically ask about SQL and Python and Tableau, and if I had used that in any other professional setting. And I hadn't. I didn't need that for those other positions, so I hadn't done that.
Gotcha. It's kind of weird. You guys are like more advanced than I am. I'm not using Python or SQL or anything. I'm starting to get into Alteryx, so I'm starting to use the like SQL like writer. I can't.
Yeah.
So I'm not like writing it from scratch.
I love SQL.
I use Python and SQL the most, so and they're my favorites. So I'd rather be doing that than other things.
I know. I've thought about going into data engineering so that I can spend more time in SQL and Python than visualizing things.
That might be the move, seriously, because I think that there's a supply demand differential, I think, in data engineering right now.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily my space, but I think that a lot of medium to small size businesses are realizing like they don't even have a data pipeline. So they're investing in that. In fact, like one of the companies that I interviewed with, they reached out to me because the CEO actually went to Greensboro College, and it was a family run business. And they were like, we're ready to hire like our head of analytics or our first like real analyst. And then I went and interviewed with them, and then they got back to me a week later and they were like, we're not even at that step. Our data is unusable. We're actually going to hire like a data engineer or somebody that can like, what was it? They asked me if I knew about something procedures in like SQL.
ETL?
Stored procedures?
Stored procedures. And I was like, what is that? I don't even know what that is.
Well, that's the one thing I didn't use at my previous job, so I want to learn more about them. Drew, have you used any?
I also don't use stored procedures, so.
So I'm assuming that it's like the data comes in, then it's like there's some automation that goes on. They like manipulate the data and then get it in some type of usable.
Yeah, I think it kind of like iterates through the procedure for like everything that you put in. I don't know. Right. I really want to learn more about it though.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about what you're doing right now, Abby, is like you have real experience and you're like, okay, I like this, don't like this so much, I'm going to go in this direction. And that's such a smart way. Instead of kind of having like a scarcity mindset of like, oh, I'll do whatever they tell me to do. You're like starting to kind of like chart a course.
Yeah.
Because it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like you're trying to build like a sustainable career.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've kind of toyed with getting my master's and maybe going in more the data engineering path. But then there's also a new course coming out on Coursera for data engineering, written by Joe
Weiss.
Yes. Because he helped write the O'Reilly book for data engineering.
I think it was something fundamentals. I think it was data engineering fundamentals.
Yeah. And so he's got a course coming out in early September that I think I'm going to take and see if it's worth getting my master's or not. I don't know.
Okay, so Jay Murphy coming in with the answer. I'm going to go ahead and say I got it right. Although this is like so much more technical. A stored procedure is a pre-compiled SQL code set in a database for a specific task. Okay.
Yeah, I've never had to use one of those.
Okay, so what questions did they ask you, or is it more just conversational?
It was very conversational. We went over time, so we enjoyed talking to each other.
That's good.
She also had 4 kids, so we had that in common. And it was the company, I don't want to say who it is yet, but the company is very much like geared towards families and parents. So we talked about the product they sell, if I had any personal interaction with it, how I would use it in my family, those kind of things. It was very much like a culture fit thing though. And I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I have homework, but I'm still kind of nervous.
What are you nervous about?
That I don't have enough of the technical experience that they want.
Okay, Drew, let me throw this towards your way. How would you think through getting over that anxiety or that hump or that feeling?
I almost want to say you kind of do want to go in with a false sense of confidence so that you give kind of a stronger answer. Not that it doesn't mean that you're not going to be a great fit, but it's more or less, I think most people always, if anything, underestimate themselves, especially someone being in the interview seat and seeing a candidate and they'll make some kind of comment like, oh, I don't really know X, Y, and Z. And then back in my mind, well, I've interviewed a lot of people before you for the same position, and they actually have less experience than you do. You never say that to them in the interview, but I think if you can exude confidence in an interview, it does kind of go a long ways. And if you really figure out a way to tie things back to what you've previously done, like what I mentioned before you joined the call, it was even if I hadn't used Tableau on the back end developing it, I mentioned how I used it as an end user. So I feel like there's always a way to frame things right, and that's almost a skill in interviews. Is how do I reframe my previous experience to kind of answer this question?
Absolutely.
Right. It's you don't have problems, you have opportunities.
Right.
But you have worked in Python though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't call myself an advanced user, but I automated reports.
Stop. You're doing it. You're doing it right now. Yeah.
Every time. Yes, I've automated reports with Python.
Okay, I need you to say that again, but I need you to mean it.
Mean it? Okay.
Yeah.
I use Python to automate weekly reports for the workforce management team.
Okay. Do you mind if I put you on the hot seat and ask you an interview question related to Python?
Sure, go ahead.
Which is funny because I don't know very much about Python. You guys know more than me, but I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I have more confidence than I should most of the time. And it's funny because it gets you things
It does.
People just don't question it. Okay, so first of all, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
What is your biggest win with Python?
Well, I use Python to automate repetitive tasks. We had several reports that we had to pull data and refresh it often, and it made more sense to write a script for it to refresh the files and then email them out to the people they needed to go to. So I used Python for workforce management to refresh data and send out the reports.
See, I think that's a perfectly great answer because you mentioned time saving and you mentioned the impact, and that's pretty much all I would be looking for in that response.
Awesome.
All right. I have some feedback.
Okay.
And
You might be meaner than me.
It's okay.
I'm not mean. I'm advocating for you.
I like the criticism.
Okay, I would say that was a good answer, but in order to take it to a great answer, I would frame it up like this, and you need to kind of go ahead and to Jay Murphy's question earlier about so he asked, how long did it take you to learn how to communicate overt value relating to, well, he said domain knowledge, but this is, I guess, more specifically tool knowledge. I would start off, almost think of it like a formula. I use Python to save my company $35,000. So and then kind of go from there. And then you can get kind of a little bit more specific too. So you can say, all right, well, Susie was doing this task in Excel. I wrote this script using XYZ, I don't know, code base or whatever. You can clearly tell I have no idea what I'm talking about. And that saved her 3 hours a week on this task. Multiply that, by 50 weeks, because we have 2 weeks for vacation, times her, hourly rate. And it's all kind of you're assuming, let's say Susie makes $30 an hour. So that's $90 a week times 50. What is that? 4,500 on just that one task. But that's kind of how you can start to build up that answer. Drew, Do you think I think that's better than how she answered it, but I don't know.
I mean, if you can quantify it, it does help a little bit. And as you work on the job, these wins that you have, and that's a great question to ask about a win in regards to Python. I would write down these wins. So then at some point if you're someone that's on the job and you're happy with your job and you're not even looking, even if you write down your wins and you kind of keep a notepad, when you do need to apply for jobs and you do need to add things to your resume bullet points or you need to do interviews, you'll kind of have a recollection of your wins. Because it's kind of hard to look back. Like, in each week you're making an impact. But then when you try to think back, what was I doing last month again? It's really hard to kind of recollect the specifics around things. So I think it's a good strategy to write down your wins, especially if you're qualifying too.
You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to even reviews, performance reviews. It's good to have a record of those wins. And I started to keep a record, but then I knew that I was probably going to be leaving, so I didn't. And I should have.
Well, I mean, do you have like a ballpark number of how many hours in a year? Because you could even like take it out to like over 5 years, like if you wanted to hit, say, like I created $1 million worth of value over a 5-year timeline or something like that,
I do know that the Tableau that I created for a department saved them about 3 to 4 hours a week of work.
That's huge. That's huge right there.
But I'm not.
Hours. I said employee hours are expensive, so that's a lot of overhead saved.
It saves them a lot of time, but I haven't been exactly sure on how I should quantify that, because it wasn't just one person's job. It was this person pulled the reports, this person put it in the spreadsheets and that kind of thing. But with my dashboard, it all went in there with SQL and automated, refreshed and automated refreshed. Sorry, and it was automated. So
Paula's got some.
I mean that solution still exists. So even though you had that solution while you're there, you could probably blow that up to a year and estimate how much you save them in a year. Because you don't have to work there for that to have an impact, but still saving them hours each week, whether you're there or not, because the process is already created. So in an interview or a resume, I would probably expand that out to a year and be like, I saved X amount of time or dollars per year.
Okay. All right.
Well, I mean, this is actually an interesting way. It's kind of cool having the audience come in and we're all thinking about it. So another way of framing up 4 hours of employee time per week is 10% of your time. Yeah. So
that's true.
Let's say that the average person makes $100,000. That's $10,000 right there. So yeah, I mean, you can frame up this story. I mean, it's your story to tell. So like, who were some of the people? What were the job titles of the people that were working on that project?
I think it was like the assistant manager who was having to deal with it in Excel, and then the people who were pulling the reports and putting it in the spreadsheet, like the data entry, those were like customer representative people, because this department had to call in and make checks on people to make sure that they were complying with their insurance requirements.
Well, an assistant manager probably makes over 6 figures at this point. So like 10% of their time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be a little generous in your story. Like they're not gonna call up the company and be like, all right, I need you. I mean, you don't want to take that to like the extreme and say like, yeah, well, I saved the CEO 10% of his time at work. It's like, okay, that's a little, right. That's a little, far-fetched, but yeah, I think that's a good way of kind of framing that up. And so another way of preparing is, have you ever heard of the STAR methodology? I think we talked about it.
Yes, and I even had that ready to go today. I had like this specific instance ready for the STAR method, but she didn't ask any of those questions. It was mainly just getting to know you and then assigning an essay.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good. I'm going to see her again. Like she told me to contact her by Monday if I hadn't heard from her. So.
Oh, Jay Murphy's got another good point. How have you kept your portfolio up and running?
I have some projects I need to add to my portfolio. I have
Okay.
lots of things I want to do for my portfolio. I've got a list of projects I want to do, but I don't know if you've ever had a 4-month-old, but they are demanding. And I'm not paying for a nanny until I get a job. So
Fair enough.
yeah. So I'm having to work on those things while he's napping and he's teething, and it's a whole thing. So
Gotcha.
I'm trying.
Speaking of portfolios, I think that's probably a good direction to go into on what should go into a portfolio and things of that nature. Because I think behind, resume, probably gets you into the interview, and then your interviewing skills is really going to help you get the job. The portfolio is also going to help them either reach out to you or get you into that interview stage along with that resume. And I think there's some right ways and wrong ways to do things where people who put down, 20 projects, it's the first person who selects people for the interview is most likely going to be an HR representative. And they're not going to click 3 or 4 pages deep, and then they're not going to go through 20 projects. So what I liked is Maven. It had the free service, and I think like 4 to 5 really good projects is probably the optimal amount.
Do you have a Maven portfolio? We were in class.
I made one, yeah.
And I tried searching for your name. All right, let's pull them up. I want to see.
This is old because it has not been touched since I applied for jobs.
What happened to
now.
What happened to the ballsy energy? You guys got to own it.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving you the link. I'm just saying I haven't touched this since March of 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much me.
I'll do it in the private chat, and then you can.
Okay. Are you putting it in? Yeah, put it in the live chat, and I can go ahead and I guess copy and paste it.
I don't see the public chat. I just see the private chat here.
Oh, the private chat. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead and pull it up on my end. Also, you guys are going to see how many tabs I have open, which is a little embarrassing.
I admitted to having 500 open on my phone.
Oh, also, I've got iris turned on. Let me turn that off. So
I'm the one who keeps it at minimum. I have 3 tabs.
The thing is, like, this is such a good metaphor for my mind because I've got like 800 things I'm working on at any given time. Okay. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Nice. Postgres. So did you create this in like Canva?
Canva, yep, for sure.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Which one do you want me to pull up?
So I think a lot of these actually just kind of reflect back to LinkedIn articles, which I think is a great way to display a project, but we can do the first one. We can do the Python project.
All right. First of all, before you even get into it, I like the fact that this is a passion project because you might run into somebody who's interviewing who also is really into basketball. And it's like,
the thing is, when I first tried to create projects, I was really, really trying to look for business data.
Right.
And there's just nothing good. And you also, if you're taking some fake business data and trying to tell a story, you can't do it too well. Whereas with March Madness, which I love to get into, I could talk about it like nonstop during an interview. But the project is really showed in that LinkedIn article. If you just that link to LinkedIn.
Okay, I guess I gotta. Can you not make a hyperlink on here? Oh. Okay, so you're posting this on your LinkedIn. So
yeah,
this is.
So if you go to my LinkedIn page, this used to be. Do you know how you have like a favorites or you have a spotlight? Mm-hmm. This like article was in like the top. It might not be anymore, but it was featured.
Right.
So, it's right there, the third one. So I think this is a great spot to showcase projects. Yeah.
Yeah. And look at that. I mean, you've got some of these have gotten over 1,000. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a really sophisticated way of approaching the job market in that you're talking about something you care about, you're showcasing your skills. It's also relatable. So people who are also data fans and basketball fans can go ahead and engage with it. And then you're getting that tertiary effect of not only is your network seeing it, but the people who engage with it, their network is too. So it's almost like a way that you can increase your digital footprint.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So it's projected the bracket is, here we go.
You had it open. That's where it was.
Okay.
And I think you opened up in LinkedIn.
Do you want, okay. I can pull it up on LinkedIn. Yeah. All right. So Python machine learning.
Yeah, so that's the post, and then it clicks into the article. And I really like their articles because then you can really talk in depth about it. And if you scroll down, you'll also see code. They allow you to input code.
Cool. So you imported pandas, the stats model API, data frames. Very cool. I'm trying to narrate this because I think I'm gonna pull the audio and post this as a podcast episode, so it's not like we're like, oh yeah, that looks cool, and then 5 minutes.
So the nice thing about his article is I can walk them through the project from start to finish.
That's cool. Yeah, because what's great about that is you get to showcase your critical thinking ability.
Yeah. And communication.
Yeah. And it's like documentation too, which I feel like a lot of companies do not do.
Oh, and they also have a thing for you to enter formulas. So then I was able to enter in formulas, including the Greek symbols.
That is awesome. You geeked out really hard on this, and
yeah,
I applaud you for that. That's awesome. Yeah, this looks, so you're getting into regression analysis. You got the formula with the Greek symbols, and then the code. This is Python code for the regression model.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I think I'm gonna. You just taught me something that I'm gonna teach my students this semester. Because LinkedIn,
especially because I was building that LinkedIn presence, so then they're coming to my page, and then I put this in the featured section, and also you can do a post to promote it. So when you create the article, there's a post that promotes it for you.
That is so cool.
Several advantages.
Yeah. Well, and this is like, I mean, if you're interviewing for a job, they're probably going to Google you. You want that LinkedIn profile to show up, and then you're like backing all this up, like you're actually like showing that you can do this work, which is so cool. That's awesome. Oh, all right. Abby, do you have anything you want to show?
She also posted her Maven Analytics. So
yeah, I have my Maven Analytics one.
Okay, well, so if your baby's crying, you can hop off. No pressure.
I do. He's screaming. I've got to go.
Congratulations on a job well done in the interview, and I wish you luck on that.
Thanks. I'll keep you updated.
All right, thanks.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay, I think we got more comments in the chat. Okay, so Paula's got some interesting advice. So for business data, she usually refers to PPP loan data, which is publicly available. Okay. It could be an interesting project, and this is just up for grabs. Anybody that's listening, is there's so much fraud that went on with the PPP loans, like maybe like investigating that. Actually, I'll tell my student Kaylin, who's interested in going in forensic accounting, like maybe that could be his final, is doing a project around fraud in the PPP loans.
that's interesting.
And then Paula was saying, that demo is really cool because it's almost like is it GitHub where you can like post all your, like you write it out and it's like your thought process with the snippets of code.
So I mean, you can post your markdown files to GitHub, and the GitHub and those markdown files are like that. Like you can publish your Jupyter notebooks.
Okay. It's funny because I just learned what a Jupyter notebook was literally on the last live stream where we had. Did we ever have Michael Galarnik as a guest lecturer when you were in my class?
I've watched previous podcast episodes with him. I had a one-on-one with him. You introduced me to him. I had a one-on-one with him before.
He's such a good guy. Like but he's also
when I talked to him, he was in Hawaii, and now he's out in Georgia.
Well, he's getting a PhD in machine learning for finance now at Georgia Tech. So what's interesting is that I just met his wife, who is a data scientist for Microsoft. So I think we're potentially going to have her come on the podcast. It'd be interesting to have them both on at the same time. I would like to see how they interact.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like both of them are like uber intellectually gifted, and I'm like, I'm over here just talking about business, which I guess you just kind of pick your lane though. Like, what's so nice about the job that I'm in now is that there's a whole team and department that does all of the data. Like, they gather the data, they check it, they send it through a pipeline, and then all I have to do is just pull it in, and then I can start to do my analysis. Because it sounds like Abby wants to go the opposite way. She wants to work on that team versus I'm like,
very technical.
Yeah, I want to be like driving strategy. Which, I mean, how to get an analytics job, it's a pretty broad umbrella. So just
for me, my favorite thing is Python. So in Python, something you can learn and learn and learn and learn, and there's more libraries to learn. And that's something I really, really enjoy about it. Also, that automation aspect, if you can save time by automating tasks, that's another great fun thing to do in Python.
So say more, what do you love about Python so much?
So my struggles with like Tableau and stuff like that is, in my head, I get ideas of, this is how I want this to look and stuff like that. But there's limitations to what you can do based on what the application is. Python is you talking with the computer, so you tell it what you want, and there's always a solution. There's not always a solution with Tableau, Power BI. You just might not be able to make the thing as the way you want it. With Python, there's always a solution, or there's always a workaround to get what you want. So I love that degree of control.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What was so cool in the last podcast episode, Michael Galarnik was showing us how easy it is to use ChatGPT to learn Python. Like you literally, we built out from scratch a linear, not a linear regression model. It was a price elasticity. Yeah, like we were looking at, which is something that I'm seeing at work. I mean, what's cool about working at a grocery store is that I get to see like macroeconomics in play.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at like inflation and like, what is that? Is that inflation going to hit our steak and eggs, or is it going to hit our banana? Like there's seeing it at that volume and that scale. It's funny because it was something I was kind of interested in when I was younger, because my undergrad was in economics, and then I went into insurance sales, of all things.
And with that job, do you guys talk about product placement? Because the thing with grocery stores is typically when you walk in, the first thing is fruits and vegetables are on the right. And then as you walk farther back, everything on the outside is going to be your meat, your dairy products, your fruits, your vegetables. And then in between the aisles is where you have the less perishable stuff.
Yeah.
I was always
there's
wondering
a whole
about the
department
strategy of getting them to walk through.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about like, what is the driver? What is getting people in? And it's different for every chain probably. Yeah. But with the Fresh Market, they have restaurant quality or restaurant grade cuts of meat. And then they do a sale, and that gets a huge amount of people in there. But yeah, it also depends. Like, have you ever been into a Fresh Market, by the way?
I have not. I don't think we have them up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're it's more of an East Coast brand, but it's I would say it's on par with Whole Foods. So it's like it's a pretty bougie. Well, it's funny because I was at a dinner party with my friend Molly, who's actually been on the podcast a few times, and her friends came over and they showed up with crab legs and scallops, and they're like, "Yeah, we were just at the Fresh Market." I was like, I should have gone with you. I get a 40% discount. And we could have gotten.
Oh, that's a good discount.
Yeah, we can get so much more crab legs. But what was interesting was that they were from Seattle. So like in Seattle, Amazon acquired Whole Foods, and it's like, of course they're going to keep those stores in their like home city pristine. But they were saying that like, so they're kind of like in the upper end economically. And they were like, yeah, the Whole Foods in Greensboro are trash. We go to Fresh Market only if we want like, something nicer.
I think that's true for a lot of stores where their home city or their hometown has a different level of expectation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is kind of interesting because Greensboro is a tertiary city. It's not very big. It's 300,000 people, but there's a name brand company that was started here, and the support centers, like it's kind of cool. I feel like almost like I'm in like a Mad Men or something like that. Like we're way up on the 15th floor in a skyscraper downtown, and you get 360-degree panorama views. Yeah, it's. I'm liking it more than I thought I would because I've been an entrepreneur for the past 8 years. So
yeah,
I like had this image of, like harsh fluorescent lights and everything's gray and depressing. And I actually have quite a bit of autonomy in my job, which is nice. Like there's work to be done and it gets done on time, but it's like, I can kind of I can work on that, in my own time. Like it's not like a structured from this time to this time, you have to go and work on this thing. And I imagine we're not going to say the name, but you work for a very large insurance company.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's kind of how your day is run too, right?
In regards to how?
Like you have projects and you're working on them, but it's not like they structure your day that at this time you have to work on this and then.
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty free. I mean, the projects have their deadlines, and then, that's kind of how I prioritize my own time, estimate my own time, and then,
right,
do what's done first, or sometimes you get in the morning and you have a report that you already have a template for that can be knocked out in less than 10 minutes. So even if it's due later, that it doesn't take any time, so you just take care of it as it comes in. But yeah, it's pretty autonomous in regards of what to work on when, just have it done by the deadline kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. I'm realizing, so I guess to kind of inform everyone, my plan was to have my Greensboro College students on the live streams at 6 p.m. But unfortunately, due to time conflicts, like there's no night of the week where every student at 6 p.m. can join. So like I just put together this group behind the scenes of like, and reach out to, and if you guys are listening who have been one of my students and want to be added to like the behind the scenes group, I just put together that group of the former students I've worked with, and it's now I'm just tapping them like, it's cool that I could just pull Abby in who's like having an interview, and then us get to kind of talk about it in real time and like help her, kind of, because that's the one thing about like getting a job is the anxiety and the kind of frustration that you feel.
It's so funny looking back because during the time it feels like forever, because I was like, well, I didn't start till I did your cohort in November and I didn't apply that first month. If I was to give myself advice back then, it'd be like, you should be applying anyways. It's going to take a while to get interviews, but I was only applying from December through not even April. It's December through March, maybe 1 or 2 days in April. But at the time, it feels like majority of a year, but really it was about a third of a year.
Yeah. Well, and you were also in a good position too, right? Like you're very financially conservative. You were like, you were nice to work with because there wasn't like I got laid off, I have unemployment, I got to get a job by this date or I'm completely screwed, which
for me, it was, I already had a job. I already had a good job. And it wasn't even a move up in income. It was like it depended on who was offering what they were offering. But for me, it was more of like a passion thing because I did major in mathematics and I have always liked problem solving and, that kind of critical thinking piece. And I just wanted to solve more advanced problems. And I felt like analytics was a good fit. And even since making the transition, I absolutely, love it and love the job. It was definitely the right choice. And being fully remote doesn't hurt either. So,
see, that's funny because we have a hybrid schedule. So Monday through Wednesday we're on site, and then Thursday, Friday we're remote. I don't like the remote days. Let me rephrase. I don't like working my remote days at home. I actually go to my co-working space. Because I find myself in this weird limbo where it's like I'm on the clock, but I'm also relaxed at home on my couch. It's like, I don't know. I guess I need like clear, like you're like when I go to the gym, I'm working out. I need to go to a place to go do a thing. This like working at home, because then it like carries over to the night and I'm not sleeping as well because like I'm kind of plugged in, kind of not. But yeah, that's cool that you're working 100% remote.
Yeah, and one of the major benefits is because I definitely ate out way too much. It would have been like at the previous job, it was like, all right, I'm leaving for the day. Oh, I didn't, pack lunch, make a lunch, stop at a fast food place. Now that I'm home, I'll go to Chipotle quite a bit still because I love Chipotle.
Yeah.
But I'll never step foot in like a McDonald's or something along that lines during Monday through Friday. I'll either make something or I'll have Chipotle once in a while because it's delicious.
Yeah. It's funny because at the Fresh Market, we have a test kitchen on site, and there's always like brownies or like exotic food or been like, and it's funny because I'm just leaning into it now. Like I was like, instead of trying to like abstain, I'm like, nope, I'm going to take 10 grams of creatine a day and I'm going to work out harder than I ever have. And I've put on like probably 10 pounds in the past 3 months, but like my waist is actually like the same, if not smaller. So
I know you used to talk about doing jujitsu. Are you still
that
implemented?
I stopped doing jujitsu. Part of that, it was just, I wanted to do it more, but like I've got this like, I don't know if it's a pull in my back or not, but it was like after every session, it would just be like throbbing. We actually just bought one of those. Rachel's in the other room, but I could ask her. It's like an electro thing where it like massages your muscles. Like I may want to go to like a sports massage therapist or something because it's like deep in there, and it's like Rachel's like pounded on it with her elbow, and it's not going anywhere. But that being said, I am lifting like deadlifts, squats, lifting way more.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I kind of prioritize, the compound movements.
Yeah.
And then there's just, some smaller accessory. But that's the nice thing. There's only one deadlift station at my gym, but luckily, like, no one really uses it, which I find kind of surprising. I mean, it sucks. For me, deadlifting is my cardio because you exert so much energy that I'm pretty much out of breath the most between reps. Because I heard it uses like 80% of your body as far as like muscles. It might not have like target muscles, but it to me it's cardio. All
right, let's put a pin on this. We will talk about it like once we end the live stream, but we can bro down. I can literally see the viewer drop.
They're like, what the heck are they talking about?
Yeah, actually, we're gonna.
You can always cut it for YouTube too.
That's true. Well, I mean, people like to get to know each other, right?
Yeah.
But I guess let's close out the conversation around what are kind of, do you have like core tenets of how to nail your analytics interview? Like, if I know that's
I would say it's
question.
a good idea. It's a good idea to know what your own core tenets are for any kind of job. So I would think, like, one thing that I always tell myself is I'll always be, functional. I'll have a positive attitude, and then I'll give effort. And that's always something that, like, I can mention in interviews. So I think having core tenets for yourself that you can then mention in interviews will really kind of convey to an interviewer who you are. And I would say the most important thing for interviews is obviously going to be rehearsal and practice. I wouldn't just go into an interview without practicing. One of my strategies is always going to be look up the top 10 most used questions, whether it's top 10 in general or top 10 for whatever job specific, and then kind of, practicing those questions.
Good. I feel like that's a fantastic way for us to kind of wrap up this conversation.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad that we got to like support, I feel like what we've built is kind of like this ecosystem, and now it's like you were in the classroom, but now you know more about specific things than I do. So I don't need to like bogart the conversation and say, this is my domain. I'm like, no, you tell me. And then also we can get multiple perspectives like what we gave for Abby. So thank you.
Yeah. No
And
problem.
thanks,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks everybody for you supporting or sending in your questions. I will see you guys next week. I think we're actually going to be talking to Joey Cheeks, who is an Olympic gold medalist that has become a friend of mine, which is weird to say. So, yeah, I thought I'd tease you guys with that. But with all that being said, thanks. See ya.